Rohit, welcome to the Positive Leadership Academy podcast. So excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
And it's so interesting. I always tell people that some of the best conversations, and I had another guest coming, that the best conversations happen on the warm up. When we get together and we kind of get to know each other and we have this warm up and we ask questions. And sometimes I reflect back and I ask myself, man, maybe I should have hit record right away. As soon as people are lagging, just hit record because we really connected. We really talk about a lot of things in a very short period of time. And I think it was very, very good. So next time I keep it in mind. I just won't tell people that I'm recording and we'll just go raw. You have a very interesting upbringing, right? Your family was or is in the military in India, and then you navigated to New Zealand, and then eventually you landed in McKinsey, which for any consultant out there, I think is the top of the top, right? And then you were involved in the world of private equity. I am curious to know because part of my book talks about how early experiences kind of shape your people first leadership philosophy, right? Into the person that you are right now. I think we don't realize, right? Because we go, and we don't really pay attention to what we went through, what we have learned, and what we have accomplished. But how was it for you?
Yeah, really, really good setup and also a good question. I think being a military kid, my dad was in the Air Force in India for 21 years, and then we moved to New Zealand. One of the things, it's always through the lens of reflection, to your point, that you realize what you have learned, and that's okay. It's like when you're training for any sport, you're actually building the muscles. At the time when you're doing it, you're not sure what exactly is happening in your biochemistry, but it's happening. And I think it's the same thing with growing up in the military. But one of the main facets that anyone who's had a parent that is in the military or in sales or a job that requires them to move will relate to this, which is you are often required to leave some friends behind, if not all your friends behind, and then rebuild new friends in a new culture, a new environment. And India, as you know, is a amalgamation of a lot of different cultures, languages, food. And so effectively, it's like going to a brand new place where you don't know anything. There's a national language, but they may or may not speak it. And so the idea of getting to make new friends, adapting, adopting, sharing, learning, that started pretty early on. And as a kid, you don't think about that's what you're doing, but you're just doing it because you're a kid. You just sort of get on with it. But reflecting on it as an adult, what it did was it was building that muscle that you didn't know you were building. And I think that was, I will admit that as a kid, it was pretty painful to leave your friends behind because you get sad, especially as you get older. You really like them and you really get along with a few friends. And then you have to redo it all over and again. But as an adult, I'm grateful for those lessons and those sort of experiences because that's allowed me to now become a big kid that gets to be in different parts of the world and work with different clients all over the world and work with different teams, different cultures without any issues. I actually enjoy it. I look forward to it. And had I not gone through those experiences, I probably would have been nervous, a bit afraid of stepping into new cultures. Now I'm like, let's try it out. And I think it's created a really nice mindset for me. So that's the benefit that at the time I didn't know I would have, but now I do. So I'm grateful for it.
Yes, and what I'm hearing is, I guess, traveling overseas is one of the best universities, right? One of the non-certifications that you will get, right? That are really valuable, right? For me, I have to. I'm a first-time immigrant, and for me it was adapting, and at the same time, I did a lot of business in Latin America, and that really opened my horizons as well. It's funny, I thought I knew Mexican food until I was traveling to Mexico. I'm like, okay, in the United States, they need Mexican food, right? And also protecting your identity of who you are, right? And not think of yourself less because you have an accent, because you have different tastes on food, or you like different, like for me, football was, I grew up with that all my life. So coming to the United States in the 80s was unknown. Like soccer was just okay. And then you're trying to cover that and not give into too much into like, all right, I'm going to lose that and give into that. So kind of maintaining those. And I think that really has helped. like you said, be open minded to other cultures.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say I probably didn't do as good of a job as it sounds like you did in maintaining that, because when we moved to New Zealand, so we moved in India quite a bit. That when we moved to New Zealand, just like your analogy about US and football, soccer, New Zealand wasn't quite ready for a lot of immigrants coming in. There were some, but not that many. And so it was a very interesting place where culturally it was like you need to adopt rather than we need to. So it was not a lot of cross-boarding, as I use the word in my book quite a bit in the context of when people bring
Mm,
individuals onto a company. It was a lot of onboarding. This is our way and you have to onboard to us. And
this is the
so
way we
I,
work.
this is where we want it. And I think in that process, I definitely, as a teenage kid, definitely lost some of my identity as an Indian. And because you're so desperate to be accepted
Exactly.
and you want to be part of that, and by the way, there's no way out. You buy a one, as an immigrant, you buy a one-way ticket, and
Hmm.
my family being in military, you don't have a lot of money. So we had, like, I think from memory, we had $3,000. That's it. That's our total cash that we had, and 6 suitcases. That's all we showed up. In fact, my dad, when he got there the first time, before we as a family went, he didn't even know where he was going to sleep the first night. So
Mm,
when you go from in that mindset that there is no losing here, we've got to make this work, then
exactly.
I think if the environment, if it's not conducive to cross-boarding, but it's more in the mindset of onboarding, like this is our way, take it or leave it, then I think it can force people. And that happens, by the way, in adult life, in jobs, when people move cities and towns, and they go into different cultures. I love what you're saying, which is that holding on to your identity is really important. And I think I wish I had done a better job of it. Now, I've made my way back. I'm going there. But I think back then, I did realize that I was compromising a lot on that front. But, again, you live and learn. You do something and you
Absolutely.
reflect on it and you go, oh, you know what? Maybe going forward, I'll be different. So
Yes.
but very similar experiences in regards to when you're going into a new culture, what types of things come at you?
Yes, exactly. And I know you coined the phrase of you're born with IQ, you develop your EQ, your emotional intelligence, but you invest on your PQ, right? Can you walk us through, what you meant by the PQ, the people quotient, and what it really means in an organization level?
Absolutely. And the way I sort of think is individuals have EQ and IQ. We all have EQ, IQ, and the world's known EQ, IQ for decades, right?
Yes.
And Daniel Goleman actually wrote about EQ, but the research on EQ had been done long before he wrote about it. And he obviously made it very, very popular. And so the idea for me was that when I reflected on years of working on management teams, that I've at this point transformed or reshaped over 100, maybe even more management teams globally, right? And from local branch operations to national to international. The thing that stood out to me, Javier, was that even I, as a leader, was very hyper focused on an individual capability level, right? What can that person do for me in this role, in this company? Which is not the wrong way to do it. It's the right way to do it. We all do it. But what I realized was, in order for an organization to really deliver, each individual cannot just operate in this own vertical, right? They have to work together. And I, as a leader,
100%.
have to enable them, not through technology, but through an infrastructure from a human capability perspective, so that Javier and Rohit can complement each other. I don't want Javier and Rohit to be like each other, right? So if you've got a strength and you've got gaps, either you can develop, or I bring Rohit in who can actually complement you. And so as a team, you actually scale. And so when I reflected, sort of studied over 100 P&Ls, over 100 businesses, different industries, different sizes, different stages. And what I realized was that the single biggest thing that differentiated companies that accelerated and beat competition and their own strategy was that they, even though they didn't call it that, they had what I'm not calling is a people quotient. And that is a combination of three things. One is leadership. They had the right leadership, but the right leadership mindset, which meant that every leader in the organization was very clear on their deliverables, but it was tied to the strategy. And so the leadership capability was very clearly in the right place. Because I fundamentally believe that it starts from the top. if you don't have the right leadership in place, you're just not going to go anywhere. And so one was they got it right. They got the people right, but it wasn't any one person was amazing. It was the collective was actually amazing. The second piece was how they were organized, which is the organizational design. And it's not just the leadership team, it's the rest of the organization. Do people have the right titles? Do they have the right job description? Do they have a purpose? Do they have the right incentives? Are the incentives aligned with the goals of the business? Because often what you find is people get incentives that are pretty standard and you know, well, how does that serve the purpose that you've laid out for the business? And do they know what their purpose is? Are they actually aware? So that organizational structure is the key. And then the third piece was talent operations, which is what the book is about, the people priority. And what that is, Javier, is you can have the right people, you can organize them, but if you're not having the right system to feed the next wave of talent in a consistent way, you're just not going to scale. So what I found, the companies that were doing phenomenally well, you know, in the top quartile, is that they were actually having all three things working for them. And it doesn't mean that you have to be best in class in all three. It just means that as a CEO, when you sit down every year and think about, I'm going to have a strategy conversation, or I'm going to have a budget conversation, I also want the CEO to say, I'm going to have a PQ conversation. Because talking about a person and their performance or a team and their issue is very reactive. I want this to be a proactive. And those CEOs who were doing it unintentionally were doing a proactive PQ discussion every year, if not every quarter. And so that's the thesis behind PQ. It's a third quotient that sits next to EQ and IQ. But it's one of those where I think companies all have it. They just don't know it. And the idea is to bring it all together because everyone's got leadership. They've got some organizational. Yes. So it's just making sure it's working for them collectively. They're thinking about it consciously. It starts with PQ rather than being reactive. That today I'm going to solve this. Tomorrow I'm going to solve this. Somebody quit. What am I doing? It's just thinking about it holistically. And I think that is fundamentally the difference maker between top performers and those who actually either average or struggle.
Yes. And I want to get to your book, The People Priority, but you said something very important. And I always realize in every corporate, I was in corporate for 35 years in corporate America. And I remember in every single company that I worked for, and I think that's why I became a coach and a facilitator, is because people will come to me, especially C-level, they say, Javier, we don't need someone that develops individuals on a personal, professional level. We just need you to produce with the team that you have as much as we can. And I'm like, well, we need to connect with these individuals in a human basis, because I will see companies as a living system. I will see companies as, okay, well, if I create a career path, if I provide all the tools for these individuals, that means I'm going to, and I hate the word retention. Like people say, we need to retain these people. You don't retain anybody. You need to grow people so they can move forward, right? So I'm hearing this, right? If we don't really create this career path, and not a career path and say, this is the way you're going to get promoted, but more investing on the human capabilities of those individuals that they can contribute more value to the company.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing I often find CEOs make mistake, I've made the same mistake, is that you over-index on individual capabilities. And sometimes what I'm trying to highlight now is that you don't have to get me to an A+ level. Me at a B+ paired with Javier at his B+ might actually be more powerful than one of us at the higher level and the other one not so much, because we two would connect better. So it's really thinking about, you don't always, CEOs like, well, let's upgrade every person individually. Yes, you can do that. It takes time. But the question is that what does your team need? What are you solving for? What does your company need? What culture are you trying to build? A culture where you've got lots of top performers and not enough, there are others who are not performing top, creates discontent. A culture with everyone's a top performer creates conflict. And that may all be okay as long as the CEO, you have clarity of what it is that you're building. And I think to your point, it is investing in people that helps them and also therefore helps the company. And I love retention as a topic. We can have a whole podcast on it, but I do believe that retention, there are two types, good and bad retention. Mm-hmm. So just a lot of CEOs like, well, I want to have 95% retention. I'm like, is that a good thing? Because you might be holding on to too many people that may not belong here. And that means
belong here.
And it may actually be good for them to move to some different role. It's not necessarily like, oh, they're bad. No, they may be amazing at a different company in a different context. So let them be the best they can be wherever they can be. But you saying I'm going to hold on to every people at all costs can actually create a false positive for you. And you're like, my
Yes.
retention is really high, but my culture is terrible. Why is that happening? Well, maybe you're holding on to people that you shouldn't be. So
Yeah.
retention is an important, but you're totally right. You need to double click on it to kind of really think about it properly. Otherwise, at the highest level, it can mislead a lot of
Mislead.
actions. Yeah.
Exactly. So your book. Let's talk about your book. The People Priority is based on a lot of your experience where you were at McKinsey, right?
No, it's actually based on my operating and investing experience. And so this is an in-field experience. What this book is about, it belongs to one of the three pillars of PQ, which is the talent operations pillar. And the idea behind the book is when I reflected on 20 years of private equity work, whether I was an operator, investor, small scale, large scale, and working with privately owned businesses, I said, well, how can I help at scale? Like, what can I do? Because I can do hand-to-hand combat with, 10, 20, 15 companies and I can build a team, but there are millions of businesses out there that are looking for help. What is it that I provide that could be useful to them? And that's where I wrote the book with the intention that the building block of any organization is a single person. And so how does a CEO make sure they consistently get good people through the door that work for their business at that point in time? So I always say right people, right seat at the right time. And so what I found was the thing that I helped a lot of businesses early on in my career is to get in great talented people and build that engine. McKinsey and Wharton were good training grounds to be able to run some of the structures, but they definitely don't apply to day-to-day businesses because when you're running a small local branch in Northeast Pennsylvania, no one's lining up outside your door saying, give me a job. People are not even showing up. So you have to go and find people and you have to make sure you get good people who'll stay because you've got an operation to run. Like in McKinsey, there's a line of really good talent wanting to get a job. That doesn't happen in real life. And so when I had to apply to real life, I started to build a toolkit. It was like, how do I make sure right from field level to management level, I've got a consistent playbook? And over 20 years, I refined that playbook. And that's where I realized after 20 years in PE that, hey, you know what? This could be one thing that's been missing when I studied the market. I said, there is no comprehensive one-stop shop which lays out a systematic pathway to attracting talent, but it is modular enough that I can pick and choose what works for me. So that's why I built this. It's got my TAF methodology, which is allows all CEOs, business owners to really pick and choose. Like, there are steps that I can borrow and steps I already have, steps that I don't care about. You can make your own methodology from this or your own version of it. And so that's what the book is about. And it's grounded in literally in-field implementation that I've been doing, not just for my businesses that I either ran or invested in, but others that I've helped. And so it's universal. So it's applied. The principles have been applied across continents. So it is pretty universal. And as you and I both know, the people problem or the people challenge is global, evergreen, and it's the most important thing that most of us deal with when we're scaling our businesses. So that's why I thought that this book would be valuable to the people reading it.
Absolutely. And it's so true, right? I mean, that's the key fundamental people, right? Going back to the PQ framework, right? You talk about these three pillars, right? The leadership capabilities, having the strong leadership, right? Your organizational design, how everybody's going to work and how they're going to work together. And then the talent operations. I work with companies that the scale from 20 to 200, right? Eventually I will get bigger companies, but at the moment that is my niche, my sweet spot. Which of the pillars you think they tend to break first, and how a founder that is growing their companies from 20 to 200 can really get those early warning signs?
It's always the leadership. It's always the people around you. I fundamentally believe that whether you're a 3 people company, because I have actually helped 3 people company to 3,000, 5,000 people company. And my sweet spot is very similar to yours, where it's somewhere between 5 and 500. And so, but the principles of PQ are scale agnostic, company agnostic, industry agnostic, and stage agnostic. And the answer to your question is that you have to start, if you're a founder listening or if you're a CEO listening to this podcast, my biggest question is, do I have the right people around me to deliver the vision and mission that I have set out to deliver or that we have set out to deliver? And that includes, am I the right person to lead that team? So it is both a reflection of the team, but also self. It's very easy to look at everyone else, but sometimes everyone else might be fine. It's the way I lead that needs to change. And am I the right person? And you could have been the right person up until this point, but are you the right person to take you to the next step? Now, it's a very bold and brave question to ask, but even if you don't act on that question, I encourage people to think about that question, because the knowledge of that sits within you will allow you to then reshape your team as a result of that. If you just do it externally and then you don't get the results, you may find that there's one thing common between your team and you, and that's probably you. And so I would say that it starts always at the top, because you and your team are shaping the way everything gets done, from the technology that you use, from the products you build, the way you deal with your customers. Start at the top. There's no point talking about organizational design. There's no point really getting into like roles and responsibilities when you don't have the right people at the top to begin with. So
Yes.
that's where things breaks early. And
Yes.
if there's one word that I think, which ties back to the question I just posed for people, the word is clarity.
Mm,
And I think if you as a leader are clear what you're solving for and who you need to get there, I think then you can make a very good sense of like, okay, now do I have everything in place or not? And
yes.
so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I at least
Absolutely,
have
because
coached and mentored CEOs.
it's so well explained. I started thinking about a particular client that I have who, very typical D on disk. And yeah, the company's not growing because basically a lot of control, a lot of micromanagement, a lot of things that he's perhaps not should be doing and he's doing because I can do it better. I have done it, and you can see that the company's not growing, right? And it's that leadership of, because I will say you're a CEO, you're a president. I mean, president and CEO to me are different, right? There's people that take both titles, but if you are a CEO of a company, you got to sell the vision outside. You shouldn't be doing any type of work inside, selling the company outside or getting investments or doing the traditional corporate marketing for the company. And it's very interesting what you say. Yeah, that those companies, I think the early sign is identify that, hey, me as a leader need to either refine my style or I need to create a better structure to support the growth of my company. And that's where, as a coach, I come in. And like you said, they don't like to hear that because they're like, hold on a second, I gotta go inward and change. Yes, in order for you to grow your business. So everything you say, I was like, God, I definitely want to clip this segment and send it to the client and say, hey, it's not me saying that.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
expert that has worked for McKinsey.
I think the thing, Javier, that I learned by being in the field, so I've managed P&Ls of $3 million, losing all EBITDA, like negative 20% EBITDA, to several $100 million, making, 15, 20% EBITDA and more. The thing that I find is that it doesn't matter how big of a business you're managing, it does come down to the person managing the business, right? And often we get out in our own way. I do that too, right? So the question is that how can you get unstuck? And is it something that you can change? Because to the point that you raised before about retention, what I found, which is the most disheartening thing that I've actually seen, is that some business owners and leaders have found unbelievable talent to come join them because they did a really, really nice job selling the vision. Then they didn't let them do their job. And that's when the suffocation happened, and all that great talent that they did so well to bring into the company just went out the door. And so I think that ability to reflect what you're really good at and where you should stop, and then get out of the way of other people, because guess what? You hired them, you're paying them to the job, is a really useful conversation to have. But that same conversation happens at every stage, whether you're a COO, CFO, CTO, or a head of a function, same thing. You've got to like bring that awareness. And for me, when I look at leadership assessment as part of PQ, I've got a proprietary technology that I've built, again, through using due diligence over the years. I've seen probably close to over 1,000 management teams at this point, maybe even more. It's not the individual. It's also, when you look at the individual profiles, is how are those profiles complementing each other? Are you as a CEO, have you got a team that's over-indexed in one attribute, so you've got a big gap that nobody is watching? Or is it evenly spread so someone's able to pick up the ball? And what are you doing to affect that change? So when I think about leadership capability, especially under PQ, it's yes, individual, but it's also the cohort of people and how they're interacting. Because that's really important. Because again, I think great talent needs great talent around them, but it doesn't have to be the same. Two Ronaldos on the team probably are not going to work out. Yeah, you go back to football. And so I think it's important to recognize that, but self-reflection is the key to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have something in common that I discovered is that when you're finishing writing your book, the people priority, you are a new dad. So you were
Correct.
writing your book between 5 o'clock in the morning, feeding, your laptop, right? I know how it goes. And the reason why we have something in common is I'm finishing my second book, about to be published in September, hopefully. And it's funny because I told my wife, I say, it happens every single time. The only time that I can write a book is between 4 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
5 o'clock, right? So we have something in common that we early risers when it comes to
Yep.
writing a book. But you became a
Yep.
father, and
Yep.
I to me fatherhood kind of change you completely, right? I think it's a beautiful experience, but at the same time, it changed you. It changed me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the leader that I wanted to be, and also I started creating that my purpose. I'm a big believer that you create your own purpose. You don't wait for your purpose. Your
Yeah.
purpose is not going to come to you. You make your purpose, but it really created a shift in my leadership. How it was for you, and what shift it created, and the impact and the legacy that you wanted to leave.
Yeah, it's still happening. He's only 1 year old. So I think the shift, I'm still in the middle of that shift, frankly speaking. But what I will say though is two things that are, again, I spend a lot of time on reflecting and introspection, not because I like to beat myself up, but because I actually really enjoy the challenge and spend time thinking about what is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing it? What's the meaning of it? And how does that tie to my purpose? Which again, as we've talked, my purpose is people and people quotient, PQ. But to your question, the two things that have popped up is number one is it's really allowing me to, because as a new dad, I'm realizing that you can't keep thinking about work when you're with the baby. So what it has done is that it's helping me compartmentalize something that I never used to do before. So as a leader, as in going forward, being able to manage that tension and then actually work through it has been a new development for me. And so, yep, I've got work, and especially since I'm an entrepreneur as well as a founder and helping others. I'm like, you carry your work all the time in your head, right? You don't need a laptop, it's in your head. And so that's been a really interesting development that, I need to stop there and start there, right? And number two is the thing that at a personal level that I've sort of realized is watching my kid grow up. It's only been a year, is that how much present they are in whatever they do. Literally every little thing, from the food that goes in their mouth, they take it out to look at it and say, well, what am I eating? And then put it back in. And you kind of go to like watching you do certain things and then starting to copy you. And so when you think about that, the presence of a leader, and I'm not saying that I'm leading my son in any way. If anything, he's leading me as a 1 year old, to be frank. But what it's teaching me is just how to be more present in whatever I'm doing. And I'm not saying I'm be doing a great job. It's realized how bad of a job I was doing. So it's been a good reflective exercise. Like, holy moly, I'm doing, as you said earlier in the conversation, we just keep going. And then, whereas they, as kids, pause, observe, learn, try to figure it out, assess if they like it or not, and they're very clear what they like and what they don't like. It's just it's binary. Whereas we tend to just somehow forget all that and get on with it. And so I think as a leader, it's important, again, that self-reflection, being present, is just starting to remind me in a very, very obvious way, which I'd heard before and I'd thought about it, but never really practiced it.
Well, congratulations. I think is beautiful. I have an 18 and a 16. And every time I meet new parents, I say, hey, I just one piece of advice: take as many pictures as you can. Now, now you can take digital.
Videos.
Back in the days, for me, it was film. And I
Yeah.
remember, I think about 6 months ago, I scanned tons of pictures because I'm like boxes and boxes. And then it was phenomenal seeing that. But I tell any new parents, take as many pictures, videos, as many videos as you like. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just take them,
Yeah.
because things go fast. And like you said, you start seeing how they're developing their personality, and and also shape you to be a better human being. So parenting is a wonderful experience that will definitely, if you fully engage as a parent, will definitely change your leadership style. Because I always say, babies are leaders because uh, they know how to lead, right? If they're hungry, they're gonna cry. If they need their diaper changed, they're gonna cry. And what you're gonna
Yeah.
do, you're gonna follow and do exactly
Yeah.
what they
Yeah.
need, their
Yeah.
needs is, so they can they can uh, they can stop crying and be in a happy place. Has been a great conversation. I talk about your book. Where can people get your book?
Yeah, we'll share that. The best place to go is to my personal website,
Okay.
rohit-bassi.com. And from there, you can find more about PQ. You can work with me. You can get a copy of the book, and you can just engage with me on various other platforms. But rohit-bassi.com is a one-stop shop. I think that'll make it easy for everybody. Otherwise, it's a very long Amazon book URL that I'd probably get it wrong anyway.
Okay. Well, I will look for it and put it in the show notes.
Perfect.
Also, you are a fellow podcaster as well. If you
Correct.
can tell us a little bit more about your podcast and how can people tune in as well. I know you interview really good leaders as well, especially CEOs and investors as well.
Yeah, yeah. My podcast is just like the name of my company, People Quotient. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the standard platforms. What it is when I was writing the book, I wanted to do some of my due diligence on the content. It wasn't just I'll put my ideas and people buy. So I interviewed several CEOs, dozens of CEOs and investors globally, and to get their feedback, to get their thoughts, a lot of which is in the book as well. But when I was interviewing them, I decided that, this is knowledge and information that I should just share. So with the spirit of democratizing knowledge, I said, you know what, let me put that out there. And then it started to get some traction. And so I've just been posting. I'm not as consistent being a new dad and an author and also launching a business sort of took me out of podcasting, but I do post reasonably frequently. But the intention of it is that people
Yes, you can get the link. Excellent, and we will also put it on the show notes as well.
Thank you.
And what I'm hearing, I think it will be a great complement as well to go along with the book as well by listening
Yeah,
to the podcast and
100%.
the book as well. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for being part of the Positive Leadership Academy podcast. I think you contributing to what I call the wellness of organizations and the awareness of leaders to
Yeah.
run better organizations as well. So I think we have the same mission, both of us. We just have to
True.
go. I know hopefully we get the awareness of the babies out there that they observe, taste, reflect. For us is just jumping in the horse and see what we can conquer for the better
Yep.
of humanity.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here.